My name is Ethan, and if I ever had any doubts about where I stood in my family, they disappeared the day I found out about the will. And the worst part? I wasn't even supposed to find out. It wasn't some big emotional conversation where my parents sat me down and told me themselves. No, I found out by sheer accident, by dumb luck. It happened a few months ago when I was at their house, the same house I had been helping them pay for over the last 5 years. Mortgage, groceries, repairs. Whenever they needed something, I was the one making sure it got done. Meanwhile, my brother Eric did absolutely nothing. No job, no responsibilities, just existing, while my parents bent over backward to make sure he never had to lift a finger. That day, my dad had asked me to scan some paperwork for him, bills, legal documents, the usual stuff they couldn't be bothered to figure out on their own. I didn't think much of it until I saw it. A folder, tucked in with the rest, labeled Estate Plan and Last Will and Testament. I don't usually snoop. But considering I was the one keeping them afloat, it wasn't exactly out of line to wonder how things were set up for the future. So, I opened it. And that's when I saw it, the words that made my stomach drop. Everything, the house, the savings, every last asset, all of it was going to Eric. Not a single mention of me, aside from a generic line about loving both of their sons equally. Yeah, equally. That's why their golden child got everything, while I, the one making sure they even had a roof over their heads, didn't even get a footnote. I felt like a complete idiot. Here I was, bending over backward for them, making sure their bills were paid on time, making sure they never had to worry about food, while they sat back and planned for a future where I got absolutely nothing. And Eric? He wasn't just lazy, he was entitled. He never lifted a finger to help them, never contributed a dime, but somehow he had convinced them he deserved it all. Maybe because he was the younger son. Maybe because they had babied him his whole life. Or maybe because he knew exactly how to manipulate them. Whatever the reason, they had made their choice. I sat there, staring at the paper, my hands shaking. How long had they planned this? Had they always intended for me to be nothing more than their personal safety net, useful only for my paycheck? Did they ever even appreciate what I had done for them? I had no idea how long I sat there, lost in thought, until my dad's voice snapped me back to reality. Ethan? What's taking so long? He walked into the room, probably expecting me to still be scanning documents. Instead, I held up the will and looked him dead in the eye. So this is how it is? My voice was eerily calm, but inside, I was burning. Everything to Eric? After everything I've done for you? For a second, my dad's face went pale. But then he sighed, like I was some little kid throwing a tantrum. Ethan, it's not what you think. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Oh, really? Because it looks pretty damn clear to me. My voice sharpened as the weight of it all crashed down on me. I've been paying your mortgage, covering your groceries, fixing up your house, and you still decided the only one who matters is Eric? Dad shifted uncomfortably. He knew I was right. But instead of explaining himself, instead of apologizing, all he muttered was, "It's complicated." That was it. 2 useless words. No justification. No attempt to make it right. I just stared at him, waiting, hoping for something more. But there was nothing. Just that same tired, dismissive sigh. And that was the moment I realized I was done. Just a weak excuse. A look that said he expected me to drop it and go back to being their personal ATM. I should have walked out right then and there. But I needed to hear it from both of them. So I called for my mom. She came in, saw the will in my hands and froze. At least she had the decency to look guilty. But then she spoke, and her words made my blood boil. "Ethan, honey, you don't need the inheritance," she said, all soft and placating, like she was doing me a favor. "You have a good job. You're independent. Eric, well, he struggles. We just want to make sure he's taken care of." That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. They weren't even denying it. They knew exactly what they were doing, and in their minds it was completely justified. Years of enabling Eric's laziness had led to this, a final reward, neatly packaged in legal documents. Meanwhile, I was tossed aside, my years of financial support treated as just another obligation I was supposed to shoulder. I clenched my jaw, took a deep breath, and placed the will down on the table. "Got it," my voice was eerily calm, glad to know where we stand. Then I turned and walked out, ignored their protests. slammed the door behind me. They had made their decision. Now it was time for me to make mine. I didn't go back after that. Didn't call. Didn't check in. For the first time in years, I let them handle their own damn problems. If something broke, they could fix it. If they needed groceries, they could figure it out. And that mortgage bill? Well, I wasn't the one paying it anymore. At first, I think they assumed I was pouting, that I'd come crawling back like always. Maybe they expected me to apologize for daring to question them. But days passed, then weeks, no word from me, more importantly, no financial help. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed, a text from Dad. The property taxes are due. That was it. No, hey, how are you? No, sorry for what happened. No, we appreciate everything you've done. Just a demand. Like I was still their personal bank. I stared at the screen, almost amused at how predictable they were. They really thought they could act like nothing happened? That I'd keep playing my role, even after they made it clear I was disposable? I calmly typed back, I'm sure Eric will handle it, since the house is his and all. 5 minutes later, my mom called. I let it ring, then another text, Ethan, please don't be like this, we need to talk. Oh, now they wanted to talk? Now that the bills were piling up and reality was smacking them in the face? I waited an hour before replying, there's nothing to talk about, you made your choice, now you can live with it. I figured that was the end of it for the day. My stance was crystal clear, and I didn't feel an ounce of guilt. But then Eric decided to chime in. His text came late that night, and the second I saw his name pop up, I knew it was going to be something obnoxious. Sure enough, when I opened it, entitlement practically dripped off the screen. Dude, why are you being such a drama queen? It's not a big deal. Just help them out like you always do. I nearly laughed. Not a big deal? He really thought I had no right to be mad. No right to cut them off. No right to finally stand up for myself. So I typed back, nah, I think you've got it covered. And for the first time in years, I actually meant it. Since you're the favorite and all, I sent the text, waiting for Eric's reaction. It didn't take long. Eric, oh my God, are you seriously mad about the will? Grow up, man, it's just money. Oh, now it was just money. Now that he was inheriting everything, it suddenly wasn't a big deal? The hypocrisy was astounding. I shot back, then you won't mind using some of that money to pay the mortgage, right? Silence. For the first time in his life, Eric had nothing to say. A few minutes later, my mom texted, and I could already feel the guilt trip coming before I even opened the message. Mom, Ethan, we're your parents. Family takes care of each other. We did so much for you growing up, and now you're just abandoning us? I exhaled slowly, gripping my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Abandoning them? I had spent years making sure they never had to struggle. Years covering their mortgage, their bills, their emergencies. All while they coddled Eric and rewarded his laziness. And now that they actually had to face the consequences of their own decisions. I was the bad guy? Not this time. I responded, you made it clear I wasn't part of the family when you left me out of the will. Now Eric can take care of you. I could practically hear my mom gasping dramatically, clutching her pearls like she was the victim. She always had a flair for theatrics, even when she was in the wrong. Then came a text from Dad, and this one had me seething. Dad, we're not asking for much, just enough to cover the mortgage for a few more months until we figure things out. Don't be selfish. Selfish. I stared at the word, my blood boiling. I had been bailing them out for years, sacrificing my own money, time, and energy to make their lives easier. I had done everything a good son was supposed to do, and how did they repay me? By making sure I got nothing in return. Now, when I was finally standing up for myself, I was the selfish one? Jaw clenched, I took a deep breath and typed back, no, I'm done. Then I turned off my phone. They had made their choice. Now they were going to live with it. The silence lasted a day. I knew they wouldn't give up that easily, but I wasn't expecting what happened next. The next morning, I woke up to a notification. A bank transfer request. I frowned, unlocking my phone. It was from Mom. She had actually sent me a request for money, like I was some kind of ATM. The amount? $30,500. I stared at it in disbelief. No message, no explanation. Just a shameless, cold demand for exactly what they needed to cover their overdue mortgage. They weren't even asking anymore. They were just assuming I'd cave. I declined it without hesitation. Not even 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Then came another text. Mom, Ethan, I know you saw the request. Why did you decline it? I took my time before replying. Because it's not my responsibility. Try Eric. Another call. Declined. Then another text. Mom, we're going to lose the house if you don't help us. Oh, now it was an emergency? After all those years of treating me like a walking wallet, now they were finally dealing with the consequences? I typed back, maybe you should have thought about that before deciding I didn't matter. A few seconds later, Dad chimed in. Dad, you're really going to let your parents become homeless? I actually laughed out loud. It was so blatant, so transparent, it was almost funny. They weren't broke. They weren't about to be thrown on the streets. They just didn't want to dip into their own savings. They were so used to me covering everything they never had to worry. I ignored them for the rest of the day. That night, another text came through. This time, from Eric. Eric, dude, just send them the money already. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. I clenched my jaw. This entitled little prick really thought he could lecture me? I typed back, you mean the same money you're inheriting? Why don't you send it? His response was almost instant. Eric, you know I don't have that kind of cash right now. Oh, so now it was about affordability? He was perfectly fine watching me drain my accounts, but the second it was his turn, suddenly he had nothing to offer. I fired back. Guess you better figure it out then, bro. You're the one they chose. Silence. No excuse. No justification. No smart remark. Just nothing. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace, like I had finally broken free from years of manipulation. But the next day, things escalated. I was at work when my phone buzzed. A call from my apartment's front desk. Hey Ethan, your parents are here? I nearly dropped my phone. What? The receptionist hesitated. They're saying it's an emergency and that you won't answer their calls. Oh, my God. They actually showed up at my apartment just because I stopped paying their bills? I took a slow, deep breath, pinching the bridge of my nose. Please don't let them up. I'm not expecting them. An awkward pause. They're being kind of pushy. Of course they were. I don't care. They can leave. I hung up and immediately got a text from Mom. Mom, we're downstairs. Open the door. No question, no explanation, just another demand. I ignored it. Another text. Mom, Ethan, we're not leaving until you talk to us. I exhaled sharply, standing up from my desk. They weren't going to back down. Fine. I was about to teach them a lesson they wouldn't forget. I stormed downstairs, my blood boiling. I wasn't scared. I was furious. The sheer audacity of these people. Showing up at my home, uninvited, demanding money like I was their personal ATM. Not even a phone call first. Not even a half-hearted apology. Just a full-on ambush. They really thought they could just corner me into submission, like I was some naive kid. I yanked the door open, and there they were, Mom, Dad, and of course Eric, all standing in a tight little formation, like they were about to stage a family intervention. Mom had her arms crossed, her classic disappointed mother look locked and loaded. Dad stood stiff, hands in his pockets, his expression a mix of frustration and entitlement, like he couldn't believe I was making him do this in person. And Eric? The little leech had the nerve to look bored, like this whole situation was just mildly inconvenient for him, like he wasn't the reason any of this was happening. The moment Mom saw me, she launched straight into theatrics. Ethan, finally, we need to talk. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. No, you need to leave. She blinked, like she physically couldn't comprehend what I just said. Excuse me? You heard me? My voice was calm, controlled, but firm. You don't get to just show up at my apartment demanding money. That's insane. Dad let out a sharp scoff. Are you really going to let us lose the house over a petty grudge? I laughed, actually laughed. A cold, hollow sound. Petty grudge? I echoed. Oh, you mean the one where you decided I was good enough to pay your bills but not good enough to be in your will? That grudge? Mom gasped, clutching her chest like I had just slapped her. Ethan, that's not fair. We only did what we thought was best for the family. I tilted my head. Best for the family? You mean best for Eric? Just say it. Silence. A long, heavy silence. Then, finally, Eric, who had been weirdly quiet this whole time, spoke up. Look, man, I don't even want to be involved in this. I didn't ask for anything. I turned to him, finally letting loose. No, you just sit back and take everything that's handed to you. You're 28 years old, Eric, get a damn job. His face turned red. Dude, what the hell? I took a step closer. You heard me. You want to inherit the house? Start acting like a homeowner. You want to be the golden child? Start paying their damn bills. I'm done being your personal bank. Eric looked away, suddenly very interested in the pavement. Mom took a deep breath, recalibrating her guilt trip. Ethan, he's your brother. I nodded. Yep. And I've supported him longer than you ever have. Dad's face darkened. You're being selfish. I laughed, an actual, genuine laugh. Oh, that's rich coming from you. I gestured between them. You two decided that Eric deserved everything and I deserved nothing. And now that it's time to pay the price for that choice, you're trying to manipulate me into fixing it. Not happening. Mom's voice sharpened. We thought you'd be mature about this. I raised an eyebrow. Mature? You mean quietly accept that I was betrayed and keep paying your bills? Because let's be real, that's what you wanted. Dad stepped forward, trying to loom over me like he used to when I was a kid. Ethan, we raised you. We fed you, clothed you, gave you everything. The least you can do is help us now. I met his gaze unwavering. I already did, for years, and you repaid me by cutting me out. Mom's lip trembled. We thought you'd understand. I exhaled, shaking my head. Oh, I understand perfectly. I understand that I was never family to you, just a paycheck. Silence again. A suffocating, undeniable silence. I turned to Eric, who was still pretending to be invisible. And you, what's your excuse? He shifted uncomfortably. You had years to grow up, to get your life together, to contribute, but you didn't, because you knew they'd take care of you. And when they're gone, you just expected me to step in, huh? Eric finally snapped. What do you want me to say, man? I didn't ask for this. I nodded slowly. Right, you didn't ask, you just benefited. His mouth opened, then closed. Nothing. He had nothing. Mom tried one last time. Ethan, we're family. Our family takes care of each other. I stared at her for a long moment before answering. Exactly. So why didn't you take care of me? She froze. No words, no comeback, nothing. I let out a slow breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. We're done here. I turned and walked back inside, closing the door behind me. Before I even made it back to my couch, my phone buzzed. A new text from Dad. Dad, wow. After everything we've done for you, you're really going to abandon us? I smirked, typing back. Me, no. You abandoned me. I'm just finally accepting it. Then I blocked their numbers. I thought that would be the end of it. I had no idea I was just getting started. It didn't take long for things to spiral out of control. Less than a day after I cut them off, I started seeing posts on Facebook. Now my parents had never been the most tech-savvy, but they knew how to air their grievances online, especially when they wanted to look like the victims. At first, I rolled my eyes, figuring it was just their usual dramatics. They loved putting family business out for the world to see. But the longer I scrolled, the more I realized. This wasn't just about me refusing to help with bills anymore. The posts were disguised as heartfelt messages about family values, but the passive-aggressive shots at me were obvious. Mom had written something about how she didn't raise her son to be selfish, and how true family supports each other no matter what. The comments? Full of pity and outrage. So sorry you're dealing with this. Kids these days just don't respect their parents. That's heartbreaking. After everything you've done for him, you're such a strong mother. Stay in prayer. Oh, for the love of... Then, as if on cue, Dad posted his own rant. So-called families should never turn their back when you need them most. We gave everything to our children, and this is how we're repaid. That was the first thing I saw when I logged into Facebook. My father had posted it for everyone to see, tagging me at the end with a passive-aggressive "I hope you're happy." Unbelievable. And of course, Eric had to get in on the drama. He shared Dad's post, adding his own self-righteous twist. Some people think family is just about money. They don't understand that family is about love and sacrifice. I'd do anything for my parents, but some people just don't get that. They're too wrapped up in themselves to realize that true love is about helping those who raised you. He even had the audacity to throw in a barely disguised jab at me. I wish some people could learn what it really means to be family. I love my parents, and I'm grateful for everything they've done. That was it. That was my breaking point. I sat there, staring at the screen, my hands gripping my phone. How had it come to this? They had turned everything around. Suddenly, I was the villain, the selfish son who refused to help his sacrificial parents, the cold-hearted one who abandoned them in their time of need. How could they? I was the one who worked hard, the one who helped them, the one who never complained. And now? They were dragging my name through the mud, rewriting history to fit their victim narrative. I took a deep breath. I wasn't going to react in anger. I needed to think. So I waited. For hours, I let myself cool down, let myself process it all. But the more I sat with it, the clearer it became. I couldn't let them get away with this. If they were going to air this publicly, then so was I. I opened Facebook, the account I rarely used outside of close friends and family, and I started typing. I didn't rant, I didn't play their game, I just told the truth. I've been quiet the past few days, but I can't stay quiet any longer. My family has been posting things about me that simply aren't true. They're painting me as selfish, as someone who abandoned them in their time of need. So let's set the record straight. From the moment I was old enough to work, I've helped my family. I've paid bills. I've covered groceries. I've made sure my parents never had to struggle. I've given time and time again, because that's what family is supposed to do. But family is supposed to be a two-way street. Over the years, I watched my parents give everything, the house, the money, the attention, to my brother Eric. Meanwhile, I was expected to keep giving without question, and I did. I funded their vacations, I covered their mortgage, I stepped in every time they needed help. And for what? To find out that when it came time to plan for the future, I wasn't even considered. Not for a house, not for an inheritance, not for anything. That was when I realized this wasn't about family. This was about control. I was never the son they cherished. I was the one they relied on when things got hard. So no, I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm choosing myself for once. I'm done being a wallet. And if that makes me selfish in their eyes, so be it. I hit post and set my phone down. For the first time in years, I felt free. Let them come up with whatever excuse they wanted. Let them try to spin it. The truth was out now, and I was done playing their game. I'm a human being, and I deserve respect. I've earned the right to be treated like I matter, not just when they need something from me. And as for Eric, it's time for him to grow up. He's 28 years old, never worked a day in his life, never taken responsibility for anything. My parents have enabled him for so long that it's no surprise he's their favorite. But he's had plenty of time to get his life together. Now it's on him to stand on his own 2 feet. To everyone who's been following this drama and blindly supporting my parents, understand this. There are always 2 sides to every story. Yes, family matters. But family is also about mutual respect. I've given enough. I'm not apologizing for choosing myself. This isn't me turning my back on family. This is me finally walking away from people who never valued me. And to my parents, I wish you the best, but I am done being your doormat. I hit post. The second it was up, a wave of relief crashed over me. For the first time in my life, I had control over my own story. No more guilt trips, no more manipulation, no more rewriting the truth to fit their narrative, and people saw it. The responses were immediate. Some were from people I hadn't spoken to in years, cousins, old friends, even distant relatives. Messages poured in. I had no idea you were going through this. I always wondered why your parents treated Eric so differently. Good for you for standing up for yourself. Support I never expected. And for the first time in a long time, I felt heard. But then came the backlash. Eric, my parents, they lost it. Eric messaged me first. Eric, you're a traitor. You really had to air our business out like this? You have no respect for family. I stared at the message, shaking my head. Respect? This from the guy who was perfectly fine taking everything that should have been shared? The guy who never lifted a finger to help our parents until it benefited him? I didn't even bother replying. Then came Dad's call. The second I answered, his voice was already booming through the speaker. You've ruined everything, Ethan. You'll regret this. You'll regret cutting us off. You'll regret turning your back on your own family. I didn't yell back. I didn't argue. I simply hung up. And then I blocked them. All of them. For the first time in my life.